Law number one is healthy things grow. Jerry, why don't you just dive in and tell us what that means?
Yeah. So, church growth has almost become a negative word for some people because it portends to make us think of comparison. And that's what we do. We compare ourselves. And that's not the right approach or the right attitude. What we want is church health. A byproduct of church health is growth because healthy things grow. Everything God created, if it's healthy, is growing in some way. And so really the first law of generating great church growth is that you have a healthy culture. Your church needs a healthy culture where people are growing and people have a good spirit and a good attitude. There's a positive kind of leaning forward anticipation of what God's going to do. You also have to have a healthy staff. It's very important that your team, whether they are volunteer or paid staff. Richard talked about our church's journey. I went from my church had one employee, and I wasn't quite full time in terms of my paycheck, to now, we have about 50 employees. So, and we've still got way more volunteers than we'll ever have employees. And so that team has to be healthy. So if you're overworking some of your team members, if you're running someone into the ground, I know the tendency is when you've got someone who's faithful and someone you can depend on, the tendency is to lean on them. But let me tell you, in the long run, you're going to want people who are there for you. And one of the things that we've learned here at 24 to Double and at Daystar Church is that when people leave the dream team or they stop volunteering, they don't go back to the pew, they go out the door because they're embarrassed. They felt like they were a part of a brotherhood. The other team members, they're counting on each other. And if they've got this overworked, overrun feeling, they're uninspired and they've forgotten the why of what's going on. All they're doing is the what. Be here at this time, do this thing, meet this deadline, and you're not inspiring them with the why, then they're gonna eventually quit that area of ministry. But what's going to happen is they're going to leave the church because they're embarrassed about it. So you want a healthy core of people serving. You also need a healthy system. If your system is, hey, we're going to bring in a big band or a big group or have some big event every other month, and that's the entire way your church is growing, well, that's not healthy. Because if all you do is put on a big show, what's to prevent the church down the street to put on a big show, or the mall across town to have a big show on Sunday? So we're going to talk a little bit more about your system a little bit later, but let me just, in law number one, remind you that you have to have a healthy system. Another thing about having a church health is setting high standards for your team. I can remember when our then worship pastor, he's now one of our campus pastors, Ben Murray, determined to set a really high bar for our worship ministry. And honestly, it intimidated me a little bit because when we started this church, I was the senior pastor and the worship pastor, and I just wanted someone with a pulse. I mean, our first drummer in our church, he played in a nightclub on Saturday night and played in our church on Sunday morning. Please don't turn me off, Pastor. I love the Lord. Don't turn me off. I shouldn't have said that in point number one. But we have really high standards now. We've learned, we've grown. And so our standards are completely different than they used to be. And you know what we found out? I'll just give you an example of how that's worked in our music ministry. We actually had to go through a period of time when we had 3 campuses, because we have satellite campuses where we live feed the video. We had 3 campuses and 0 full-time worship pastors. And yet you couldn't tell a difference on the weekend. And it was all because we had set such a high standard and we maintained church health. So if you're going through a problem, like a divorce or a big time sickness, we ask you to sit down off of the ministry team because we want to pour into you. We want you to receive. That takes a lot of faith to do that because you need someone to sing well this weekend. But you've got to think long term and not be so focused on the moment. Right now, we're in what we call the Best Staff Ever campaign. And we're trusting and believing God that we're going to build the best staff any church has ever had. In fact, I heard that from the Lord. He said to me, Jerry, if you'll build the staff and not go try to hire them from somewhere, steal them from another church, if you'll be committed to building them, I'll make sure they're the best staff ever. And so, I'm building them. I'll quickly tell you, if I can think them off the top of my head, the 8 areas that we build people in. All our staff, I work, or someone on the team works with them in 8 areas, and they are faith, family, finances, freedom. Freedom has to do with freedom from a bondage or addiction or temptation. Faith, family, finances, freedom, fun, fitness, friends. I think I said family, and then focus. So it's a your focused area of ministry. So it's a holistic approach, not just saying, I want you to do this for me, but saying, I'm more concerned with you, how you grow, what God's doing in your life than what you're going to do for us. One more thing, I'm going to have to hurry, Richard, but one more thing in being healthy. You need to plan intimate times with God for yourself. As the senior leader, here's the thing about an intimate relationship. If you're intimate with your spouse, that's the most intimate relationship you have. But you're not intimate daily. All right. You're probably not intimate daily unless you just got married. All right. You're close every day. But there are intimate days, intimate moments. I think you should do the same thing with God. Don't feel guilty if you woke up on Saturday and only spent 5 minutes doing a quick devotion. That's okay. Just stay close to God today. But plan an intimate moment. Plan an hour-long prayer walk. Plan a morning that you don't go to the office and you just listen to worship music and you pray. You need to be spiritually healthy, Pastor. And I was talking to a pastor just yesterday who's struggling with this because he said he didn't have enough time. I want to challenge you, because we've all felt that way. You do have enough time. You're spending it on something else. So put it on your calendar. And when someone asks for that time, say, I'm sorry, I just checked my calendar. I already have an appointment. And make sure there are intimate times with God so you have a break from work and you stay healthy. It can't grow if you're not healthy.
Boom. Let's pray and get out of here. Yeah. Some of you are probably thinking that's what I needed to hear today. Hang on, because that's amazing. I think, Jerry, and the sower, the parable of the sower comes to my mind, that when the seed fell on fertile soil, it produced 30, 60, or 100 times what was sown. And Pastor, if you're not fertile, if you're not healthy, then you're not producing what you could produce. If that is a countercultural, counterintuitive idea, that being healthy is going to produce more, but you know that that's the way it works.